Today, I'm taking you into one of the strangest true stories of the space age. A plan so weird, so bold, it sounds fake. In 1963, the United States released hundreds of millions of hair-thin copper needles into orbit to make a faint, artificial belt that could bounce military radio around the globe. Not science fiction, not fantasy, just Operation Westford. And yes, I dug up the receipts so you don't have to. Stick with me. By the end, you'll know why we did it, how it worked, and whether we should ever try something like this again. Early Cold War communications were fragile. Undersea cables could be cut. Long-range radio bounced off the ionosphere and got moody every time the sun sneezed. The Pentagon wanted a global link you couldn't jam or blow up with one strike. That's when Walter E. Morrow at MIT Lincoln Laboratory pitched a radical idea. Don't rely on the ionosphere. Build your own radio reflector in space using tiny copper antennas, by using physics, not magic. Because obviously, when radios misbehave, the solution is to give Earth a very thin copper beard. This wasn't glitter or a disco ball in space. It was a tuned passive mirror. Each needle was a half-wave dipole, having two conductive elements cut for the microwave band they used, about 1.78 centimeters long, hair-thin, so it would efficiently reflect an 8 to 8.4 gigahertz signal. Picture two giant flashlights on Earth, actually 60-foot dishes with pencil-thin beams. High above is a very thin mist of copper specks. When both beams hit the same patch of that mist, the signal scatters off the needles and reaches the other dish, like two flashlights aimed into the same bit of fog. To make that work through such a weak mirror, they used big hardware, approximately 0.15 degrees beam width, about 60 decibels of antenna gain, and approximately 40 kilowatt transmitters. That's a lot of focus and a lot of power. Think of many toasters pointed at the sky, but smarter. They planned a near-polar belt around approximately 3,600 kilometers up, so two far-apart stations could see the same overlap in space as Earth turned. The payload carried approximately 480 million needles, about 19 kilograms of copper, embedded in naphthalene. First try, October 21st, 1961. The dispenser didn't spin right. In orbit, that binder sublimed, evaporated, letting the needles drift into a sparse torus. The needles cold welded into clumps. In other words, no belt. Second try, May 9th, 1963. It worked. A sparse belt formed near approximately 3,600 kilometers, and Millstone Hill in Massachusetts linked to Camp Parks in California. Voice, data, even teletype crossed the country by bouncing off that mist. That's a real working demo. Moral of the story, if at first you don't succeed, fix the spin, launch again. Operation Westford was built having in mind that the haze of copper will disappear over time. Each speck has a big surface for its tiny mass, so sunlight gives it a tiny push that slowly stretches the orbit until the lowest point dips into thinner air. Then drag slows it, and the speck falls back and burns up. A temporary radio-friendly haze, not a bright Saturn ring you could see from your backyard. Because the needles were moving fast, the signal arrived a little off-pitch, that's Doppler, and a little smear in time, meaning tiny echoes from different needles. Engineers built special receivers and used those huge dishes to lock onto the shifting pitch and untangle the mini echoes. The result, clean enough to use. Although astronomers pushed back on the operation, even a thin belt raised concerns about sky clutter and radio noise, and about one country changing the space environment without asking. That debate helped cement a principle you'll find in the 1967 Outer Space Treaty. If your activity might harmfully interfere, you do not deploy, you consult first. Most needles re-entered on schedule, just as planned, but that 1961 failure left clumps, and even the 1963 success produced some clusters. Decades later, catalogs still showed a small number of those clumps in orbit, tiny compared to today's debris, but a clear lesson. Little design misses can scale over time. So be very mindful of what you create and what you destroy. As time passed by, technology sprinted past it. Active communications satellites, think Telstar and everything after, did the job better. No more needles were launched after 1963. West Ford was the first big public fight over engineering the near-Earth environment for security. Today we're arguing about mega constellations, radio quiet zones, and debris. The same questions, just bigger. The lesson: consult early. Design with end of life in mind. And don't confuse a clever workaround with a future-proof system. For a blink in history, Earth wore a hand-stitched copper halo. It worked, then fell home. The needles are gone. The questions they raised, who owns the sky and what do we owe it, are still with us. If you were in the room today, would you greenlight a temporary reflector belt to cut radio congestion? Yes or no, and why? I will be reading all the comments. Thanks for watching. Support the channel by hitting the like and subscribe button so I can continue filling your mind with curiosity. Until the next one, remember, stay curious.